Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Some Parts Not Included, an amputee podcast where three friends that are amputees are just hanging out, talking about everyday amputee stuff. My name is Amanda Marie, and I'm a right leg amputee, and these are my co-hosts.
Jamie,
the left arm amputee, and James. Oh, wait, the right arm amputee, Jamie, and James, the left arm amputee. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
So today we wanted to talk a little bit about how we cope with bullying. I believe we've all probably been bullied at some point in our lives, or I have definitely been bullied at different stages in our lives. I have my own ways of kind of coping with that, but wondering how stories you have and how you guys cope with it as well.
Well, you know what? I'll kick us off here with some of the stories that I have, because I do have some stories from my school years, being bullied. One in particular that always comes to my mind was one of my good friends in early elementary school. I think it was grade 5 or 6. I was best friends with this kid. I won't name his name. And we used to do everything together. He lived on my street. We were super cool together until one night we had a sleepover, and a couple of friends from our class, we all came over, and we were playing knockout boxing on the original Nintendo. That's how old I am. So we were playing knockout boxing, and I know a lot of the people from the 80s going to be like, oh yeah, I remember knockout. It was really great. Well, I kicked all their butts at knockout boxing, and apparently he was butthurt about that, let's just say. So the next day at school, and from every day after that, he was like my nemesis. He like turned against me for some reason. I know it's super strange, but so every day after that, he would come into school and he would make fun of my arm, and he would make up all these awful names that were really hurtful. I know I can already tell your dogs he's not liking this. He's mad at he's mad at this guy that was making fun of me as a kid. He's barking in support of us.
Very protective that way.
He's very protective. I can tell. You can tell. Dogs are funny that way, right? But I remember his name. It's weird now because I kind of like the name that he called me. It sticks with me, and I want to say it. I don't think that your dog likes that I'm going to say it. But,
you know what? My dog is upset because my neighbor's home and he is a bully. So she is my protector. So yeah, she's like, there's a bully in the presence. So that's how I cope with it. I get a guard dog.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Go on.
No, that's okay. Going back to it. Yeah. So it's weird because I kind of look back on the name now and it cracks me up, which is like a weird thing to say, but it gave me, it really hurt as a kid, but he called me the one-hand tin can man. And for some reason, I know it's so stupid, right? It's such a weird, dumb
I kind of
name.
love it.
I know. I like it now. That's why it's like, I'm so divided about this.
Like, can we start calling you that?
You can. I like it now. Because there's no better way to show that you don't care than laughing at it and being cool with it. Like, yeah, man, I'm the one-hand tin can man. That's right. I'm a one-hand tin can.
It's so long.
Anyway, but I don't even know where he got tin can. I think it's because there was like a piece of metal like that. Right in my wrist, there was a piece of metal. I had a sports hand that was like a scoop. You guys remember those sports hands? Or any amputees watching, there's the sports hands that are just like a rubber scoop. Kids use them to scoop in the sand. Or what's that?
The child sports hands, yeah.
Child sports hand. And it's just it's a multifunctional hand for different types of sports. You can use it for anything. It's just a rubber hand, and then there was a bit of a metal around my wrist, and I think that's where he got tin can from. But as a kid, that hurt a lot because everyone thought it was pretty funny too, right? So one hand tin can man, one hand tin can man, or they used to call me, and so that in grade 6, that kills you. That kills you, right? Like you guys, you are those kids now. That's what's happening. You are the bullies of this podcast, all right?
It's
This is a
actually
serious.
so good. Like, I really hope we can find this guy and have him on our podcast.
I'd like to high
You know
five.
what? I don't think I'd be surprised. I just don't think that he went down the right path in life, to be honest with
Aw.
you. So I, unfortunately,
Which
but you
makes
know what?
sense.
As kids, he was just a bad kid. He was, but anyway, like I was an angel, right? So it was more of an angel than he was. That's for sure.
We'll
I
get
just,
But
your mom on here to.
what's that?
So we'll get your mom on here to disagree.
Yeah, my mom. No, my mom would agree. My mom knows how much of an angel I am. Right?
right,
She raised angels.
right.
Um, No, you know what? I'm definitely not an angel. Let's put it that way. But I wasn't like that. I wasn't a mean kid like that. So, but I really think that it's weird that a lot of the bullying that I've encountered in my life is when I've been better at someone at something and they can't handle it.
So
That's
jealous.
it's a yeah, and it's like they can't handle, like, again, hockey, just street hockey, playing street hockey as a kid. I'd get bullied because I was a faster skater or whatever, right? Like because I was good at the sport and they couldn't handle that I could skate around them and score goals or whatever, right? Or that we won the game.
And
So
and the guy who made fun of you, you also probably bullied him because he was better at rhymes than you.
he was better at Yeah, that's a good rhyme, okay? He might be a rapper now. I don't know. He could be.
I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
It's true. That's a pretty good rhyme. It really is. Like coming from one rapper here to another, like Bionics McLefty here. Okay, like I'll throw some freestyles down if I have to for our audience, right? Actually, I better not say that, or else people are gonna request it.
Okay, we'll just edit this whole part out.
That's
Just
okay.
kidding.
No, this has been the best.
No, now I'm keeping it in.
Oh, we're keeping it.
Oh,
We're keeping it.
definitely.
Anyway, so that's one occurrence that I had as a child when I was bullied. And that was, but that did, as a kid, that did hurt because I guess because it was kind of funny and it did kind of rhyme. I don't know how it was clever or why I was the one hand tin can man, but that's the one thing that always stuck with me. I can't even say that now because it's a pretty good name. In fact, I think my buddies might watch this and then start calling me the one hand tin can man.
I'll be
But as an
disappointed
adult,
in
I'm
them
cool
if
with
you don't.
that because I've learned from my many years of being an amputee that the best way to deal with bullies is to not let it bother you and in fact embrace it and be like, yeah, I am the one hand tin can man. And that's cool. What are you? What's cool about you? You know what I mean? Like I so if we're talking about bullying and coping with bullies, I guess that's one of my methods of coping with bullying, as I did in high school, was to be um, was to make the jokes before anyone else did, like
Yep.
to use humor, right? To show everyone that I don't care, I'm comfortable with it. You can make a name, that's cool. I like names, like. But as a little kid, it wasn't like that, right? Like I hadn't realized that yet. That using that humor and using that mechanism to defend myself against bullying. I didn't have that yet, so I hadn't learned that yet. So I only learned that in high school, to which I was also bullied, but like to the point of like, it gets to a point where, or like I would accept, names they're calling me, and it would be super cool, and like, like I said, I would deal with humor until it got physical. So there were points in high school where it did get physical. And that's where the game changes, because you can't laugh that off. Like, I remember one situation where a guy picked me up, way bigger than me. I was a small kid in high school. He just grabbed me and tossed me in this mud puddle. And that was, and we wore uniforms. I had a nice white shirt on. And when it got to that point, there's not much you can do but like go to the school and go to the teacher. So when bullying hits a point of physical abuse, then the game changes, right? And that's when you
Yeah,
have
good
to.
point. Good point.
Yeah. So
Because there's stuff within ourselves that we can control how we want to, and then other times I cannot believe this. There's a dog. Can you see? There's a dog fur.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with your camera. You got some dog hairs flying across there.
What on earth? Oh, the joys of owning huskies. I'm like, there's just a single fur that just decided to get stuck across my camera there. So my apologies.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think you're right, James. I didn't really have very many bullying experiences at all, really, growing up. I think that the most I had was people just assuming I couldn't do something and either not inviting me to that activity or not partnering with me for group work and things like that. But really, that was probably it, really. Like, I think that there was one incident where all of my friends were invited to go swimming and they assumed I couldn't swim, which is like, the activity that I can do pretty well. And then the other one was it was like an art project or something like that, and it was cutting out shapes and then gluing them to things. I don't even know. And they assumed I couldn't cut shapes out. Like, I can cut shapes out. It's not that difficult.
You just put a light bulb off in my head when you said picked last, because I dealt with a lot of that too in sports, like at
Absolutely.
school. Yeah, I was picked last a lot of times because I didn't think, but I was a really sporty guy, and they would learn fast that they probably wanted me on their team. But yeah, I know I dealt with that too, being picked last and then having to sort of prove yourself. I think a lot of amputees have to do that. I remember being picked last once in baseball, and I remember some kids hanging around the baseball diamond that used to come out, and I was with friends from my street, actually. We would just go pick up baseball, and I remember some kids making fun of my arm, and this is, well, as I get halfway through this story, I'm about to tell something that maybe is not the best way to deal with bullying. So I'm not promoting violence or anything or what I'm about to say. But I remember getting to a point so extreme once when kids were chirping me about my arm playing baseball that I took my arm off and I threw it at them like a boomerang and just missed him. He out jumped it. He just missed it. And this was my recreational limb. So they're super durable. They're super tough. I wouldn't throw the Myoelectric. That's too nice. I wouldn't throw that. But I had my sports arm. So, and guess what?
Don't throw anything.
They didn't
Yeah,
get.
Legal disclaimer: we do not believe in violence. That is not a healthy.
Absolutely the wrong approach.
Don't use that coping skill.
But you know what? I'm being real, man, on this podcast,
Absolutely.
and that's what I did. And you know what?
Yeah.
You get pushed to a point where you just can't take anymore, and you do something that maybe isn't the right way to deal with it. And that's what I did that day, because I was so mad. Like, you want to make fun of my arm? You want to make fun of my arm? Okay, here, why don't you eat it? You know what I mean? Like, so so I threw it at him. You know what I mean? Like, not
Absolutely,
physically eat it, but eat it as in throw it at him. But
I mean, I was always picked last as well, but for good reason.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I'm definitely not going to teach my daughter these methods. Just so, and if anyone's watching and they're like,
James learned from growing up what not to do and what is healthier
and
coping.
so I will. And you know what? I of course worked with child amputees for a lot of my life, so obviously wasn't giving them those examples. And
it's okay. Ava and I are going to have a conversation about the names. We'll call you back when you make fun of her. So.
I wouldn't make fun of my own daughter. My God.
But James, it sounds like you other than being ostracized from things and left out, you don't really have too many stories about bullying, so you didn't have to develop too many coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I don't really have very many at all. Amanda, do you have any bullying stories? Do you have any coping
Yeah,
mechanisms for that?
I definitely got bullied quite a bit. Not, I didn't even personally, I didn't even think about or consider being picked last as like a form of bullying. It was more like if I didn't get picked last, like if I was second last, it was usually to like the most unathletic person there, even though I love sports and I did sports, but I would like celebrate not getting picked last. Bullying, though, for sure, I've received throughout different stages of my life. I'd even say as an adult, I've had to deal with bullying, which was shocking for me.
Hmm.
Oh, you don't think you're going to deal with it as an adult. So it's kind of like blindside you a little bit. You're like, is this actually really happening? I didn't know that we were above the age of 10. But growing up, yeah, definitely, I'd say name calling would have been something that happened frequently. Comments about that made me develop body image insecurities, which we talked about last episode, if you didn't check that out. And then I have a very vivid memory of in high school. We were in the cafeteria and I was sitting with a huge group of people, and a subject had come up. I don't even know if it was about, I was just sitting there. I don't even know if the subject had anything to do with what the guy said. I'm not actually going to say exactly what the person said, but it was extremely vulgar. Um, but just basically telling like me I'm not of value or worthy of having a romantic partner, and it in the most vulgar way possible that took me out, like even still as an adult, like I'm okay with the situation and what happened and transpired since then. So they made this comment at the table. Everyone heard. I was so embarrassed. Luckily, someone else at the table immediately stood up, like physically stood up, and was like, it is not okay to make these comments, and kind of came to my defense, um, which is funny. So fast forwarding many years later, but it was an embarrassing moment, right? Like they singled me out. They kind of bullied and said little stuff like this to me throughout high school, but that one specific situation in the cafeteria, because I knew everyone heard, everyone stopped talking, everyone looked to see my response, and it was so uncomfortable and nothing I ever thought someone would ever say to me. Rewind several years later, I bump into this person and they're an adult, and they actually apologized to me because they
Wow.
actually, it sat with them for years, and they came to me and apologized and said, I said it because I was insecure about myself, which is kind of what I want to dial it back to when people do bully us or make these comments. Um, his apology was very genuine. He took time, it sat with him for a really long time. It really upset him enough for him to come forward several years later and make a wholehearted apology and know that
Good.
he tried to change. Yeah. And ultimately this one's a good story. They don't all have good story, like good endings, sorry.
Hmm.
Um, but the one thing that is a huge takeaway from that scenario, or even just firsthand experience, which we kind of know, but until we experience it, it might be hard to tell us ourselves this, is that when people bully us, it's a reflection of their insecurities. It really has nothing to do with us. Anybody who's bullying, like think deep down that you want to go out in public and just look at someone and pin something out and say something or do something negative to them. Obviously when you're a kid, maybe that's more in nature to do those things, and kids can be cruel, but especially as adults it's not okay to be cruel,
No.
and we
Yeah.
should learn better by then. And even adults, like I'm saying teenagers, I don't think at the stage where teenagers come in, like this is a really heavy time to learn not to bully and teach each other. Like that should have developed way earlier on, and now we try to carry those lessons through in those teen years. So once you're hitting 18, I don't think those comments are like, at that point the development of bullying is so much deeper on the other person's side, other than just part of the stages of development as a human being. My coping skill to this is morbid humor. Kind of even like what
Yes.
you said, take ownership. I take ownership of it. I've never had anything become physical like James had happen. If it does, definitely I encourage you to bring in authorities and upper people. And I would also encourage that if it's verbal behavior or emotional abuse as well. Um, you don't have to deal with that alone. And even though we will talk about how we use coping skills, there's also like you don't have to cope with it on your own. But for me, it was reflecting on what that person's probably going through in order for them to have to try to bring me down, because I generally bring a pretty positive energy places I go, or so I've been told. And I know my intention is never negative to other people. For someone just to out of nowhere, I'm like sitting in the cafeteria eating fries, and for them to say something like that out of nowhere was like, what?
Yeah.
So
Uncalled
I
for.
dealt with it as owning the situation, making fun of myself, masking basically,
Yeah.
and just trying to make fun of myself. But it made me develop insecurity issues with my body. It made me develop an eating disorder, where I just wouldn't eat at all, which is not healthy. It's not a good coping skill, just we're being honest. But
Mhm.
that's what it did, right? It totally threw me in this place that I was like, I can't do this or I can't do that, because it all correlates back. And a guy is thinking this. So if he's thinking it, does that mean other guys are thinking it?
Mhm.
So it perpetuated into something much bigger, long term, even if the person did apologize to me, right? So but yeah, coping skills, laugh. I laugh a lot, and eventually you start to realize it has nothing to do with you. And
Absolutely.
you
Not at
need
all.
to have the confidence in yourself and to build it up. And we have good days and we have bad days with it, obviously. But
Mhm.
that's personally how I've chosen to deal with it. I have been in a situation at a job. I was removed off a task because I had one leg at my job without, and it was announced to the whole building
Wow.
over a radio I needed to be taken off the job. And it was really shocking to me because I didn't think
That's
it'd be something
wrong.
I was dealing. Pardon?
That's wrong. It's that's
Yeah, it was. And
Workplace bullying is a whole other thing, man. It's real. Absolutely.
it's so real. And I was so taken back because I've never experienced anything like that. I'd never had like discrimination in a workplace for being an amputee. And so it was the people around me that were like, this isn't okay for this to be happening. And I was in such a state of shock. Like, did that actually just happen right now? And I was fully capable of doing the task. The way it was handled was I did go to HR about it. I did think it was very important, not just for myself, but that this didn't happen to other people. So it was important for me to vocalize, not that there was other amputees there, but it's the principle, right? If someone's in charge and this is the way they feel open about treating me, maybe they're uneducated, maybe they're unaware. So I took the stance of I wanted to educate the person. And so although I very much had the choice that they could have been terminated, I chose to say I would rather have them educated, because if we terminate them, they're kind of just going out into the world. And I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. I'm just saying this is what I chose to do in the moment. I still teeter back and forth in hindsight looking at it. But in the
Mhm.
moment, I thought it was just so much more important to teach somebody, so that way if they go on to a different job, which we don't work together now, like they will know how to do better with other people that come along the way. So they
You
did
made the
have to
right
go
choice, I think.
through, pardon?
You made the right choice, I think, and you took the higher
Well,
ground.
and I knew that person was going to continue in leadership, whether they're at that place or not. And so it's like, okay, so they go to a new place and then they're also still not educated. So for me, that was really important to say, okay, at the time, for sure, I want them educated. They did have to go through programs, um, and take courses on how to properly handle these situations. And when they came back, they genuinely were upset. They genuinely apologized to me. And I have no hurt feelings with that person now. And I'm not going to share their story, but they did share things with me that it was a reflection of what they were going through in their life and their experiences with an amputee that made them think that was the appropriate thing to do. So again, it had nothing to do with me. It had fully to do with them. And then we just gave them more opportunity to educate, to develop their mindsets, and they were very grateful of it. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I do look back and wonder, like, was that the right approach? But I don't know. In my heart, it was at the time, and I don't lose sleep over it. But my biggest thing was like advocating, right? I wanted to make sure I'm advocating for other people with disabilities in the future, and how does that look? So, yeah.
It's funny how it always kind of goes back to insecurities on the bully side, right? Like even as like issues that they're their own issues, even that they're dealing with, even as kids, like in my stories where, you know what I mean? Like if I was like a little bit better than them at a sport, it was their own insecurity, or if I beat them at knockout boxing, it was their own insecurity. It kind of always goes back to their own kind of issues that, you know what I mean? Like and it's kind of funny, even as an adult, and it's kind of the same, right? Like, but
it's interesting because like I take a look at myself and I don't think I was ever a bully. Like, I mean, I obviously had insecurities even when I was younger. I mean, have I bullied either of you?
A little bit.
But a little bit.
Dude, I think no one bullied you because they were afraid to. Because they knew that there would be repercussions. Like, Jamie, that's why you didn't get bullied, because you knew that they knew that they'd get a whooping, probably.
That's not the first time that I've been told that I'm scary.
They knew not to mess with you, man. Like, that's why I think they could tell, man. Like, oh, we're not gonna mess with this girl.
Am I scary? I don't know.
She's fierce. No, it's not. It's a good thing.
But yeah, to kind of go further than that, because I obviously had insecurities growing up, but I don't think that I was ever the one to bully. And so, it makes you think a little bit, is that what was missing for that insecurity based on mine? Is it because I had the opportunity to talk about my insecurities, or that my parents were really good at asking about them, asking how I felt, talking about feelings maybe? But yeah, so that's kind of an interesting, I know it's kind of a shoot off from this, but
no, I see what you're saying. In other words, you didn't bully other people, but you had insecurities. But just because people have insecurities doesn't automatically mean they're going to use that to bully other people, right?
No. But as we were saying before, is that often bullies bully because of their own insecurities. But then, that question is, but then what's different, in those? Anyway, it's a deep dive into the human mind, but
the human psyche.
Yeah, well, I think emotional intelligence does have something to do with it here. That's another topic, but I do think
for another day.
For another day, for sure, that we actually have lined up. But I do think it's about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, your ability to control your response. I say that a lot. A lot of my friends will say like, "Oh, you're an angel," or you're so good, blah blah blah. You're always so positive. And I recently actually reminded one of my friends, I'm like, it's not necessarily that I'm always just positive. It's that I'm able to control my emotional response and think logically. So I am able to think deeper about a long-term solution. And when we emotionally react to something, we're not getting the long-term results that we actually want to have. We're just snapping. We're instantly, we're not taking time to digest, become self-aware, reflect, and then determining how the other person feels and keeping that into consideration to know how are we going to respond? Because I think our response is different depending on who's on the receiving end sometimes. Or I know that's my
Absolutely.
experience,
Yeah.
right? Some people
Absolutely.
you have to be a little more tender with, some people you have to be a little more abrasive with. Um,
I
Mhm.
think it's obviously different, right? Depending on the person, but and depending on the situation as well. Um,
Absolutely.
but to give, like, I feel like, because I've talked to so many amputees, and it was kind of like in my previous job, kind of one of my fortes was like, peer counseling and helping a lot of amputees with bullying and coping mechanisms. I feel like I need to, if there's any parents that are listening right now, I feel like I need to give them better advice than, yeah, the humor, dealing. My personal coping mechanism was like being human, like dealing with humor, or being like humorous and like kind of like laughing it off. That doesn't always work for everybody. And I feel like if there's anyone listening, there are obviously different um, mechanisms. I think one of the mechanisms, like you mentioned, Amanda, was educating people. So, like, talking to your peers about your amputation, why you were born that way, like educating people a lot of times as one good way, like talking to your classmates or whatever about it as well. Like, I know, and I've talked to many amputees in high school that were like severely bullied about their amputation. And I know in one particular case, I just said, listen, like, as best as you can, you got to try and ignore it. And they were like starting to not even go to school and fail their classes. And my advice to them was just like, sometimes you have to go to, like, the higher authorities and stuff. But like, high school, I hate to say it, it's kind of like it's a bit of a joke. Like, it's not the real world, right?
no,
Like, study hard, just study, do your schoolwork. That's and pass your classes and get
find
out of high school, and
hobbies.
then you're in the real world, man. Like, that's right, man. Just do your studies and study hard and get through it, and then you'll see that when you leave high school and you go to college or whatever university or go into the workforce, that people that generally adults accept you for who you are. Surround yourself with people that are building you up. And if someone, like, has anything negative to say, or just don't associate yourself with those people, because you don't need to associate yourself with those people. Have people in your life that are going to build you up and are positive. And like, usually once you're out of that whole game in high school and the popularity and
I
you know,
will say, as an adult, though, I've experienced bullying enough in the workplace to say that sometimes you can escape it. And for
mhm,
me, like the first step would definitely be trying to address the situation professionally. If you can't talk to that individual in the workplace, um, other steps I took was went to our management. When management didn't do anything, went to HR. When HR wouldn't do anything, then my next thing that I told myself was, I'll find a new job, because obviously this is a toxic workplace. And this is just kind of the honestly being very realistic. Yes, sometimes you go to a job, and most of the time you go to a job and people aren't like this, but not always. Um, Once I got to a point where I'm like, this entire environment doesn't care about my mental health in this situation, I will apply to other jobs. I will find something where people do respect me. And I started to compartmentalize my day. So I knew I'm going to come to work. I'm going to deal with this while I'm at work. It has nothing to do with me. It is a jealousy situation, and I'm aware of that. And then once the clock hits 5 or whatever time I was done, I then could shut it down, leave, and I would start a new day, I would call it. And this new day was my personal day outside of the workplace. And I would surround myself with people, like you said, that
yeah,
uplifted me, that gave
that's
me
right.
good vibes, that would tell me the exact opposite things, or I would do things that would make me feel better. So, not necessarily relying on other people, but I would go to the gym. The gym made me feel so good and make me feel strong. I was independent. It would build all these positive emotions in me. So that would be the first thing I do, or go for a walk, or go to the beach, or go grab my favorite coffee. I'd start filling my own cup back up. in order to block out what I was having happen to me, right? So I do think it's realistic to say you will still sometimes have these things happen. In which case, it affirmations to yourself, your surroundings, and how you treat yourself. Don't let the bullies win. So if you start to find the things that they said creep into your head, challenge them. Ways that I do this or have done this is I used to have a journal. I would write down tons of affirmations, or I'd say out loud. If there was one negative thought, I would have to challenge it with at least 5 positive thoughts. Another thing I do, and I still do this, is I wrote on my mirror in the bathroom. I actually wrote something like, I have magnetic and positive energy or contagious energy. And it was supposed to be for me only. And so when I would come into the bathroom and I would see it, I could look at it and be like, okay, you're not annoying, because that's an insecurity of mine. I think I'm annoying and I'm going to burden. And so I'd read it and tell it and download it. I never wrote anything else on this mirror, but my mirror is full. It is completely full of positive things that my friends, when they go to utilize my bathroom, they write on my mirror. So I can't even clean the mirror anymore. It has all of these spots all over it. And I can barely see myself through the mirror. But when I look at the mirror, I have so many affirmations in different handwriting from different people. And that indicates to me like I am surrounding myself with good people. And I have made that shift and said, acknowledge if an environment is toxic or people are toxic, I'm cleaning house along the way in my life. So
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah, that's great.
I know I have a new mirror that I keep meaning to put up to replace it. And then I'm going to just take it and put it somewhere else in my house, and my friends can start fresh because it's pretty full. I can't see myself to like
That's
brush
great,
my
man.
teeth
Every time you look in
properly.
the mirror, it's like you have all these positive messages.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. Just it's a way for you, because honestly, how many times have you looked in the mirror and you notice stuff about yourself that you don't like? Or you're like, oh, I have a pimple, or where now I have a hair growing somewhere I didn't want to grow. Like there's a wrinkle. There's always something that you're going to look and be like, oh my God, I'm not perfect. So instead, when I look at it, I can't even really tell because there's words everywhere covering up my imperfections. So
Maybe I
that's
need
a
to do
coping
that.
mechanism for me.
I love that.
Yeah, it's encouraged. Find ways. And if one of these doesn't work for you, don't get stuck on keep using it. That's also important too. It's important to test different things. So if something's not working, then you know and don't waste your energy, and you can try new coping skills. So if we didn't mention any coping skills that you use as viewers, if you've been bullied ever in your life, everyone's been bullied in their life. I don't know a single person that hasn't been bullied like at least once, except for Jamie apparently has like very little times in her life. Or you know what? Maybe even if you were bullied, you didn't even recognize Jamie because your confidence was high and you were very self-aware and emotionally intelligent to just like deflect it and not let it download. I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I think
Yep.
so. For sure.
Yep.
Do
And
you
it's
have
good to
any other?
surround yourself with like a positive like group of friends. Friends are another big one there. Like
Yeah,
you just
absolutely.
surround yourself, like you said, with people that are uplifting and build you up. And a lot of times if you have good friends, you don't even have to defend yourself against a bully. They'll do it for you, right? So
Yeah. And even if you only have one friend, or let's say you have no friends, let's just pretend. Find ways and things that make you feel good. Hobbies, different activities. There's a whole world out there. Like as an artist, when I went to school for art, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not like, I feel accepted. There's all these art nerds out here that are just like me. And it made me realize like there's a whole other world out there of people that are just like you.
like,
And if you go
yeah,
and try a new activity, you can make new friends at those places. So
find a community of alike people.
yeah,
Mhm.
and do things that just fill your cup. That's
And if
really
you are an amputee that's being
important.
bullied, you definitely can try to reach out on
Yeah.
groups of other amputees. And because again, how many times we come back to this, like the amputee community? How many times as kids did we get together at events or see each other and we're like just able to get all of this off our shoulders and like be able to talk to each other, like having a core group of friends of amputees, like having other amputees that you talk to and having that community. That amputee community is huge, man. Like when you're, especially if you're an amputee being bullied about your amputation, there's so many other amputees out there that are going through the same thing. Find that community, reach out to them, use social media networks, like everything like that.
We're also
Well,
here.
yeah,
We're
I was going to
also
say,
here.
so what I was going to say is that's kind of the point of our podcast, is to build this community and give people, obviously we would love to help you. If you want to comment, make a comment down below in our videos. We are always watching and looking to respond, make sure that we're engaging with you and building the community. But we also want it to become a place where other amputees can talk and meet and support other amputees, not just us directly, but all our
Absolutely.
viewers, and build that community together for each other. So please feel free to share your stories about being bullied or how you managed to overcome them or your coping mechanisms. Anything that we missed out kind of on that subject, we would definitely love to hear it. And we definitely are here to advocate and build this community. Hopefully that's my intentions.
Mine too.
Mine too.
Thank you everybody for joining us today. If you liked this video, then please give us a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, comment down below, hit that bell so you get all notifications for our upcoming videos. And until next time, peace.
Cheers.